To today's training. We're going to talk about how to build your audience and your influence authentically and honestly. This training is part of the Thrive Method, and I am Hillary Johnson, the CEO and founder of Hatch Tribe and a business growth coach who works with women entrepreneurs just like you to help you grow and build thriving businesses. And this is a really important topic. As you start to think about growing your business, it's really key that you're talking to more and more people over time, because we can't keep talking to this same audience over and over and over and expecting our businesses to grow. So the audience is part of that, but also influence is part of that, which is how well is your messaging really connecting with the audience, and is it causing them to want to do something differently? Ultimately to buy from you. But we're going to talk about how influence isn't really about sales, but we'll talk about what it is about, and you'll start to develop some really powerful messaging for that in this training. So I'd like to start here. You don't have to be a person of influence to be influential. In fact, the most influential people in my life are probably not even aware of the things they've taught me. And I want you to think for a moment about the people that have influenced you. Maybe there are people that you're close to. They could be family or friends. But there's also those other people, the people that you hear on a podcast, or perhaps you've read their book, or maybe you've come across them on social media and you realize how they've impacted your life or your business or caused you to think differently. Recognize that there are people like that out there in the world, and that ultimately you can be one of those people for someone else. People are influencing us all the time, and hopefully in good ways. And that's what we're going to talk about, is how we really influence authentically and honestly, and do so in a really positive way. Because of course, influence can have a negative slant to it, and that is absolutely not the intent of this. And we want to make sure that we're really operating above board in our businesses. So your goal at the end of this training is to choose one audience and influence building tactic, and then to go all in for the next 30 days. So you're going to land on that very swiftly. I'm going to walk you through it step by step. You're going to build a plan for it, and then get after it for the next 30 days so you can start building your audience and your influence in a new way. So let's go ahead and dig in. Here's what's happening on today's workshop. So the first is we're going to talk about how to grow your audience of ideal customers and clients without getting lost in so-called vanity metrics. We'll talk about where influence really comes from and how to tap into yours in an honest and authentic way. We'll talk about specific marketing tactics that you can use to grow your audience in an organic way. We'll talk about the best marketing platforms to build influence and authority for your business, and importantly, how to experiment and test audience building ideas without getting overly worried about the results. Okay, let's break it down, because we need to talk about these two terms and make sure we're really on the same page with what they mean and what they mean in the context of your business. So let's talk about audience. Okay, these are the people, like a very specific group of people that are most likely to want your product or service. We talk about this as being like the ideal client or the ideal client avatar. And these are the people who really should be seeing your marketing campaigns. So when you think about what we're getting ready to build here, when you think about your marketing of any kind, we want to make sure that it's hitting your target audience, the people that are going to be most likely to want your product or service. Now, influence is a little bit different. Here, what we're talking about is this is to affect or change someone or something in an indirect, but a usually important way. Okay, so let's keep building on this definition of what influence means. Who do you want to influence? This is a question that each of us as a business owner really needs to be able to answer. Who is it? Specifically, who are your ideal customers and clients that you really want to be able to influence? And importantly, what kind of influence do you want to have on them? And note, the immediate answer is not sales, okay? So we're really breaking apart these two things. Like, yes, and then we're going to be very clear. Marketing tactics are designed to generate sales over time. But when we talk about influence, we are not talking about conversion, converting. We're not talking about convincing someone to buy from us. That is a different conversation. So here we're really going to be thinking about influence in a very different way. Now, we got to talk about something really important here because we're talking about audience building at the same time. And this is really important that you understand this. And I know that some of you right now are feeling some resistance to this statement. The number of followers you have does not equal the number, meaning dollar amount, in your bank. This is something that I think many business owners, and myself included at one point in time, really thought, well, gosh, like I feel like I need more fans and more followers. And if it's not a certain number, then I'm not going to be able to build a really successful business. And we really need to debunk this. There are many people, and really Hatch Tribe included, who has a very successful business, but we don't have millions of followers. We've proven that we don't need that in order to do it. And there are plenty of other people and businesses that have proven the same. So I just want to make sure that we temper this idea of audience building with understanding that doesn't mean that you've got to go out and generate hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands or millions of followers on any given platform in order for this work to be really meaningful. And this is the key. When we do that, we start chasing vanity metrics. And these are things like impressions or likes or shares or comments or followers, open rates, views, traffic, time on site, bounce rate, and more. Now, these things have merit, and we'll talk about where they do. But I want to give you an example of where this is a true vanity metric. The number of likes that someone gets on a Facebook post does not mean that that's the number of products that they sell. You know, any one of you, ourselves included, we could put out a Facebook or an Instagram post, get boatloads of likes on it that absolutely translate into nothing as it relates to sales. It could be popular. And that's where really this idea of vanity metrics come in. It's about being popular, but not necessarily being effective and efficient in your marketing. So vanity metrics can look great on paper and to the undereducated. So today, if you were undereducated, you are now not. You now understand that these vanity metrics are not what we want to chase. And the reason why is because they fail to measure the actual important business outcomes in our businesses, like conversion rates or return on investment or customer lifetime value. Now, they also contribute little substance to proving whether or not your marketing is making money, but that doesn't mean they're meaningless. You know, if we look at something like the likes on a post, it can tell us whether or not that's the type of content our audience likes. So they can be helpful for driving brand awareness and really optimizing our marketing. But it does not mean that they are what put money in the bank. So let's just make sure that we divorce these things. So yes, we're going to talk about building your audience. We're going to talk about building influence with that audience, but we want to make sure we're not chasing the wrong metric because that's not really what this is about. Ultimately, at the end of the day, sales are the important part of any marketing effort, period, end of story. But as we talked about earlier, we're not going to be talking about how do you influence people to buy from you. That's not the part of the influence we're going to be talking about today. That would be a bit more on the negotiation skills training. Okay. So should I still try to grow my audience, you might be thinking? And the answer is yes, yes, yes. And here's why. In order to grow your business and continue to grow it over time, you always need to be bringing people into your sphere of influence, or to say, into your orbit. You know, you want them to know about your company so that when they get to the point of wanting your own product or service, that you are top of mind. So we want to grow our audience always, and this would be the case for a new business, and this should be the case for a business who's 5, 10, 20 years old, 100 years old. This is really critically important for a long-term sustainable health of any business. So we're going to get started on building out this plan. So at this point, I would invite you to grab the workbook that's associated with this. You can use it in Google Docs, where you can just type everything online if you prefer that, or you can download the PDF and you can work in that in written form, or just grab a pen and notebook and let's get rolling. Okay, so as with all marketing, it's not just about shooting out stuff into the marketplace, right? We want it to be grounded in some very important things. And the thing I'm going to ask you to start with today is I want you to think about one product or service that you want to focus on growing in the next 30 days. So perhaps your business offers 3 or 4 or 5 different services. Pick the one that you already hopefully already have in your 90-day plan, your 90-day sprint, or something that you're sitting here right now saying, this is the single most important thing that I focus on and I grow for my business right now. Okay, you got it? So that one product or service, that's the grounding point. Now let's move into step 2. I want you to reflect and think about who is the ideal audience for this specific product or service. I want you to be specific, and you've done this exercise before for your business, no doubt. But I want you to think about it for this product or service. So let's just say if you were a marketing firm and you offered, let's say, 5 or 6 different core services, but one of them was designing websites. I would want you to think specifically when you're designing websites, who is the ideal audience for that particular service? Is it a new business? Is it someone who's revising their website for the first time? Is it someone who needs a complete overhaul? You feel me? So for that specific product or service, who is the ideal audience? Get clear, niche it down, be very specific. I want you to have in your mind and written down a very clear picture of who he or she is. Okay, when you've got that, let's move on. Now, in step number 3, I want you to identify 3 places where this person is spending time and consuming content, but you're not really showing up there. So let me just reiterate this. We're looking for places where this ideal audience, they're hanging out probably online, and they're spending some time, they're consuming content, but you're not there. They're probably consuming content from some of your competitors, from other people in your space, maybe even from adjacent industries to you. But you at this moment in time, or your business at this moment in time, is legitimately just not there. Okay? So let me give you some examples. So let's just say you're the yellow circle. The yellow circle is like right now in your business, maybe you're just focusing on Instagram posts and Facebook posts. So when you start to think about your audience, you go, well, yeah, I mean, they're on Instagram and they're actually hanging out in stories and we're not doing them. Maybe also you're like, yeah, when I think about my audience, they're listening to podcasts and like, we're not there. We're not hosting a podcast. We're not guesting on podcasts. Like we're not nowhere near it. And maybe you say, gosh, another place where this audience is spending time is on YouTube. And we don't do video. We're not showing up there. Okay. So let me give you another example. So maybe in your business, you're doing Instagram posts and stories and email marketing. You're like, okay, when I start to reflect on my audience and I think about places that we're not even on Facebook. And I know that some of my audience is there. Or maybe I know that some of my audience is doing workshops and events, like they're attending things that are being offered potentially by my competitors. And I'm not doing that. I don't have that as an option. Or maybe right now you're like looking around going, dude, I know this audience is engaging with Instagram Reels. And like, I don't even know how to do that right now. Okay, you tracking with me? So I want you to have written down just 3 areas. And again, the key point here, and I just want to come back to this, it needs to be an area where this person already is, but you are not. Okay, so we're not making it up. We're not pulling it out of a hat. You know, it's not just like, oh, Instagram Reels, they're a new thing and we're not there. Well, if your audience isn't there, that's not a thing you want to choose. Okay, all right, let's move on. So the next question becomes, well, then how the heck are you building influence? Like we've been talking about like the what we're selling, the who we're selling it to, and where these people are. So how do we start to build influence? All right, let's dig in. So I like to start with this. I found this online and I thought that it was a really beautiful iteration of what influence means, and especially for leaders. And I just want to say, you, my friend, fellow CEO, you are a leader. Even if it's just you solopreneuring right now, you are leading. You are leading your business, okay? So it doesn't matter how many people you have on your team. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing this. You are a leader as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. And so some of the things that really define leaders with influence is that they often are giving when they don't have to. They care for others. They grow continuously. They live authentically. They empower others. They manage hardship. And they serve with humility. Now, anywhere on there, did you see the word sales? No. And that's what's important, again, is just to remember when we talk about influence, we're not talking about convincing someone to buy from us. We're really talking about taking a position, and we'll dig into this a little more, but I want you to note this, that authentic and honest influence really comes from a great place. It comes from heart. It comes from service, meaning how are you serving others and really helping others. And so influence is a beautiful thing. It can be used in such a positive way because you're really intending to help others. And I'm going to start helping you unfold what that messaging is going to look like for you and for your business. Now, this is one thing that's really important. And for many of you, you may meet this with a little bit of resistance as we start to go through it. But the North Star, meaning like the real, this is the term that I use for like, okay, if we're really trying to find home here and we're really trying to point this in the right direction, this is what we need to understand above all. That if you're going to build your influence honestly and authentically, you have to stand for something. So in the world of marketing speak, we would often call this something like your unique point of differentiation. This is part of what sets you apart from your competitors, but it's also something bigger than that. It's having an opinion. It's standing for something. It's speaking up for something. And this is really important when we talk about influence because you simply can't show up and be all things to all people. So it's okay to be polarizing. It's okay to have a strong position. It's okay to be vocal. It's okay to stand out. It's okay to be different from your competitors. And in fact, you must. We simply cannot influence if we don't stand for something, if we're not willing to put ourselves out there. And to be clear, your message is not going to resonate with everybody. There are going to be people that just they're not vibing on it. They're not feeling it. And that's a win because that tells us that we've got something that's working for part of this universe of people. And think about it. Let's just zoom the lens out right now. Do 100% of all humans agree on all things? I mean, let's just take politics for a minute. No matter which side of an aisle you sit on, we know that people don't agree. Even with perhaps a one party, people don't agree within that, right? But people, and let's just use politicians for a minute, politicians come into a market and they stand for something. And that is part of how they begin to influence and really draw in their audience and really, really find their following. So this is an important part. And I know that for many of you, you're like, oh God, like, does this mean I'm going to get judged? Does this mean that I'm, potentially going to turn people off? Does this mean that people might not like me? And I want to be clear. Yes, that's a possibility. Even with Hatch Tribe, there are things that we put out into the market and people don't agree with them. And I know that that's good. We're speaking to the audience that we really intend to serve. And there are going to be people that sit on the outside of that don't agree with me, that don't agree with the message. They might not even agree with this training. And that's okay because there's somebody else that's going to speak to them. And that's really the point of any business is we need to find our own unique tribe and our own unique audience and really resonate with them and stop trying to be all things to all people. So you want to build some talking points for this influential and powerful messaging? I know you do. Okay, we're going to work in that workbook. Or again, if you just have a notebook and paper or notebook and a pen, that's perfect too. All right. I'm going to give you some prompts. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is write down your thoughts to these prompts, and you can hit pause on the video and just catch up. Like as soon as you get those thoughts down, hit play again, and I'll meet you on those next questions. Okay. What are the biggest mistakes you see your audience making that's causing unnecessary pain? What's wrong with what they're doing? So I want you to really think about the audience that you serve and what are some of the mistakes that you're seeing that they're making without not coming from a judgmental place, but from more of a diagnostic place. You're like, whoa, like if this person could only stop doing this, they'd really be able to experience this other thing, right? What are the mistakes that they're making and what's wrong with it? What are they doing that's not working? Okay. What's a popular opinion in your industry or with your audience that you completely disagree with? So, this is where you can see we could get a little polarizing with the type of content we might talk about. Maybe there is a big belief in your industry about a certain thing or a certain practice or something that's commonly in the news or is commonly talked about. So, what's a popular opinion? And it could be industry, or it could be specifically with your audience that you really disagree with. And this really should connect to how you're transforming your clients through your product or your service, right? So, how does that connect? Okay, next question. What is a common myth or belief about your industry that you can help debunk? Now, you may note there's some similarities between this and the prior question. So, here what we're asking to think about is what is something that people believe about your industry that's not actually true that you can help disprove? So it's something there's a common belief or a common myth where you're like, whoa, everybody thinks this, and like it's just legitimately not true. I can show you how it's not. Okay, next question. What do you know to be true that your audience can't yet see? So I'm going to give you an example. So as a business coach who's owned businesses for over 10 years, I can tell you diagnostically, there are many times working with a business owner that I can see something that is not yet working. Like it's not working in their business. I can tell you exactly why, but they're not quite there yet. They can't see it because they've been in this situation for so long. They've been buried in their own business. They haven't zoomed the lens out enough. They haven't been asked the right questions to necessarily see why it's not working, right? So, what is something that you know to be true that somebody, your ideal client, really is just not able to see at this moment in time? Okay, next question. What specific topics related to your business could you talk about all day long? So if you and I sat down and I was like, all right, tell me what's the most important thing I need to know about your industry. And you were like, I'm going to rattle it off. What are the things that you're like, dude, I could talk about this all day? Like you get fired up about it when you're talking to like one of your clients about it. You get pumped the hell up. Like for me, y'all know if you've been around for a while, for me, it is often marketing. I literally could talk about it all day long. I get jazzed up when I talk about it. I can tell you all kinds of things about it. Um, I can talk about consistency all day long. You'll hear me talk about that actually later in this presentation. So, what's something specific that you could talk about all day long? Okay, next up, what is your most polarizing stance about your industry? So, think about something that you're like, dude, I just wish other people could see this. And you feel strongly, fervently about the opinion you have or the stance that you have because you have enough experience in it, you've dealt with it long enough, you see it through crystal clear eyes, but it's polarizing. Not everybody agrees with you. What's that? Now, this is going to be kind of a broad bucket of things here, but I want you to get at the core of this. What I'm talking about is the passion. What do you stand for? What are you fighting for? What are you passionate AF about in your industry? So for me, and to give you an example, when I start talking about the work that I do and why I'm so passionate about it, it's because it connects to women's rights. Because I view entrepreneurship as really being a gateway that allows us to change women's rights from the ground up. So if we help business owners become successful, they can really create their own futures and really chart their own path. And it really elevates women and arguably all humans from the ground up. We don't have to wait for somebody else to pass legislation or hand something down to us. We can change that. It starts with us. It starts with you and me. That's something that I get passionate about. It's why I fight for what I do. It's what I stand for. So I want you to know what that is for you in your industry and in your space. What are you fighting for? All right. And last question, what makes you different from your competitors? So maybe like maybe you're like, dude, I know that like in this way, this is my point of differentiation. This is how I'm different. This is what I bring to the market that nobody else does. This is how I do it. This is different. Maybe you don't. And maybe it's been a while since you've really looked and reflected on who the competitors are in your space and what they're doing. And I encourage you, if it's been a while or you've never done it, I'd like you to dig into that. Don't do it right now, but come back to this. Set some time to get into that in the next week, because we need to have perspective on what our competitors are doing in the landscape, because it changes and it evolves. So if I think about Hatch Tribe 6 years ago, when it first got started, we had a certain landscape of competitors. Boy, now do we have way more companies that are in the space of helping women entrepreneurs. I mean, it's vast. And so it's really important for me to understand what's my unique methodology that I bring to the table. What am I fighting for? What am I standing for? What am I different? In what way am I different? So know that. Okay. So now it's time to bring all of this together, because I've just given you prompts for some really powerful messaging, some topics that you could be talking about that are going to help you build your influence with the audience that you intend to serve. So let's talk about how all this rolls up. Step one, I need you to pick that specific product or service. You've already done that. You already have that in eye. Like, okay, this is the one I need to focus on for the next 30 days. Step two, a specific target audience. And you've already identified this. You know who that person is, who's like the perfect ideal client to buy that specific product or service. Then, zooming down in step three, you identified 3 potential platforms to expand your reach. But now, having gone through that exercise and now thinking about the topics that have come up out of that brainstorming of powerful and influential messaging, I want you to think, which platform would be best for you to really come out with a bang, to say what you need to say, whether that's verbal or whether that's written. Like, where can you really bring that message to light in the best way to reach that audience, to sell that service? Now, step number 4 is like, okay, now we have to really put out there messaging that matters. All of those prompts are going to guide you to specific topics that you can talk about in your marketing, meaning on whatever platform you choose, that is going to resonate, because we know that it's something that matters. It's something that's deeper. It's something that's beyond just, hi, buy my stuff. It is deeper, and those are the topics that are going to be most meaningful, most powerful, and most influential. And then step number 5 is when you've combined that together, you're just going to go all in for the next 30 days. Now, I have to talk about this, and I said that I was going to bring up the word consistent, and here it is. The marketing mantra is always going to be this: I will commit to the strategy. That is what you're writing down right now. That's your strategy, and I'm going to ask you to commit to it right now. You don't get to screw around with it for the next week and then decide in 3 weeks that you're going to do it. No, 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 no. The training is going to be done today. Commit to the strategy. 2, I will consistently execute it. So for the next 30 days, what I'm asking you to do is consistently get after it. Now, you'll find in the workbook what I've suggested is really ironing out 4 topics. That would give you one that you can talk about every single week. And that's typically a really good cadence for most people when they're testing out a new strategy. So perhaps one of the topics that comes to light, feels really powerful and really good, and you're like, cool, that's the first one I'm going to do. I'll bring that in week 1, and then you just follow course afterwards. So here, again, I need you to consistently execute it. And this is why you cannot build an audience or build your influence by showing up when you'll feel like it. You can't do it. So this is the key with all marketing. If you want to build the audience, if you want to build your influence, if you want to generate more sales than you have right now, you have to consistently market. This is your commitment to your audience to show up, to support them, to help them. And last but not least, I will experiment and learn from it. This is a really important part of marketing. is that it's a test. Anything you put out there, there's no guarantee it's going to be right. But what I've just guided you through are the right steps to get you to a really good guess, a really good guesstimation of what could work based on what you know at this moment in time. After you run it for 30 days, you're going to measure the results and then decide what works from that point. You will learn from it and really understand more than you do at this moment in time. So there's your goal. Choose one audience and influence building tactic and go all in for the next 30 days. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I feel you, but I feel like I'm not sure I've got the right ideas. Like, am I thinking about this right? Did I pick the right platform? So I'm going to give you some awesome ways to build your audience and influence. So I'm going to walk you through them step by step. First up, podcast. I can't say enough about this as a platform. It has never been easier to enter into the world of podcasting, and many of you are avid listeners. And no matter what the topic is, there are ample podcasts on it, and there are deep interest expressed in podcast. So this is a wonderful way to build audience and influence, whether you choose to host your own show and potentially interviewing others, or you can go be a guest on other people's shows. Podcasts are often looking for industry experts to bring on their show, and especially with so many podcasts out there in the world right now, often they have a link directly on their site that says like submit to be a guest, because they are looking for really awesome people to come on the show. Now, here's another one, video. I know. You already know that video is the preferred medium for all social media platforms right now. The reason why is because it's sticky. People get in there, they start watching video content, and then they do not leave the platform. And that is where these social media platforms are able to generate ad revenue. So you have a really prime market right now to enter in and to do video. And it could be you just recording straight to your camera on one of those influential topics that you landed on, or you can host interviews to really broaden your reach. Because think about it, if you bring on someone and you interview them, whether we're doing a video or podcast or otherwise, what do they do when it airs? Well, they go share it with their audience, which is a great way to build and double out your audience. And I would also consider guesting on other people's channels. A very popular thing right now is Instagram Live and doing those on other people's channels. So it could be like an IG Live interview, and potentially you host that person on your channel, and then you go over to their channel and you do a separate IG Live with their audience, which can be a lot of fun. So I just noted at the bottom, there's a couple options here. Recorded options would be Facebook, Instagram TV, and YouTube. And live would be Instagram Live and Facebook Live. And I will say LinkedIn is actually getting into the game right now pretty heavily on video too, so do take a look at that as well. Okay, blogs and articles. Now, this is another way to really build your audience and your influence, because it allows you to build credibility and authority on a very specific topic. Now, featuring interviews or guest bloggers on your site can significantly broaden your reach, because again, as you publish other people's work or you interview them on your site, what do? They share it with their audience, which is great. So typically that ends up going out, people click on it. You'll also get some backlinks if they link it off into perhaps other areas of their own website, like press links. And that's a really great tactic for you to offer to write and guest publish on other websites. That builds your own credibility, but it also improves your SEO with backlinks to your own site, which is great. And I will say too, I would also consider publishing full-length articles natively on LinkedIn. This is a strategy that we have used periodically and have found that it tends to get really good results. It gets more eyeballs on it often than just typical posts do, and especially more than just sharing like the URL from your website to LinkedIn. So just another option. Okay, user-generated content. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the term, this is where your audience creates content and sends it back to you that you then put out on your channel. So like if we use the example of what you see in this photo, let's just say you're a bakery and you're like, oh my God, I love this photo that this person took of their whatever that thing is, cookie with icing perhaps. And then you ask them, hey, do you mind if I share this out like on our social media? And likely the person who took the photo is going to be like, yeah, totally do it. And then you've got really cool content that you get to share out. And that person's also probably going to be pretty stoked about it. And then typically they share like, oh my God, look at the bakery that they shared my content. You see how this goes? So it's a good way to engage your own fan base and ask them to provide you with content that you can share on your own social media channels. And this can also be a great contest. So perhaps you've seen these before where a company will host a contest saying, hey, send us your photos of you using this product, or you, whatever the topic is, share a testimonial with us, or whatever the case may be. And then you draw from all those submissions and you do some type of a giveaway. So that's a nice way also to tie those two things together. Okay, workshops and trainings. Now, this is a fantastic way to build your influence and also build your audience. And these can be hosted online or in person. And ideally, these are used to showcase your own unique skills, services, or products. And events can be paid or unpaid, and they can be hosted online or in person. So you've got lots of options here. And I think, over the course of the last year, I think many of us engaged in more online events than perhaps ever before. So I think what we're seeing right now in the market, and of course, as of the date of recording this, we are headed into June of 2021. So we're talking about the post-COVID kind of swing back. What we're starting to see is there's a lot of appetite and temperature for people getting together in person. So if your industry lends itself to that, to pulling people together, even for just a small, like in-person gathering, we're finding there is a lot of appetite for that at this moment in time. And those really serve the purpose of doing both. And you might be able to make some money with it too. Okay, public speaking. Wow, I just realized that's the same photo, but I digress. Minor mistake. So public speaking, here what we're talking about is pitching yourself to speak online or in-person events. And this is arguably one of the best ways to really build your audience and influence. And the key here is you're going to need to do a little research. Events are always looking for people to speak, but these could be local events in your own area. That could be stuff through like the Chamber of Commerce. It could be things in your industry that are perhaps in other cities. So you've got lots of options. It's just going to take a little research to figure out what events they are, what their timing is in terms of submissions, and then whether or not they're paid or unpaid. And I will say I do speaking events, and I have done both. I have done events that have been unpaid because I've deemed them to be, one, a really good fit for my audience downstream, meaning like, oh, if I speak to these people, chances are this could translate into something business related down the line, or because it's a cause or an organization that I really believe in and I am happy to support them by doing it as an unpaid event. But I've also done paid events, and that is also a fantastic thing to do if you really develop a strong position and platform and something to teach on or educate on. You can really build a robust career speaking for paid gigs as well. Now the key there, and one of our members in the community actually works in this space. I mean, she will tell you, you have to stand for something. Like you can't just come up there and be like lollygagging and motivational rah-rah, because they're a dime a dozen. So you really, if you're going to have a robust speaking career over time, you'll need to stand for something. But today we're getting that ball rolling. And you could truly go out and pitch yourself right now. You do not need to have a whole bunch of bells and whistles in order to do that. All right. And emerging tech. This is where we're going to leave it in terms of ideas for how to build an audience or build your audience and your influence. Emerging tech is a space to do that. The three things, again, at the moment I'm recording this, they're really emerging, are TikTok, Reels, and Clubhouse. And I'm not going to talk about the merits of each of those platforms, but I would say as a whole, what's important to understand is that emerging technology can be a great place to capture attention from a new audience, because there's a lot of excitement typically when these platforms launch. We find a lot of user adoption, especially when they're very well funded. Instagram Reels is a great example of that. They want that platform to be very successful, and they're investing a lot of money into making sure it is so. But the key is, and this is the same with all marketing, is you've got to make sure your audience is actually there and that it's in alignment with your brand. And so I'm going to use Reels as an example. Right now you're seeing it, no doubt. Like in your feed, you're seeing lots of Instagram Reels, and you're probably seeing some interesting ones, and you're probably seeing some terrible ones, and you're probably seeing some like, wow, I can't believe he or she just did that ones. And I think what's important for us to understand as business owners is just because it's capturing attention doesn't mean it's really good as a marketing vehicle. Again, we're talking about vanity metrics, right? So don't get lost in the sea of that. But if you're like, wow, my audience is there, I'm seeing really good engagement on content that's good, that's powerful, that's educational, that even my competitors might be doing on that platform, okay, by all means, take a look at it. Okay, so let's come back again to your goal. Your goal here is to choose one audience and influence building tactic and go all in for 30 days. Now you'll note inside the workbook, there is a section at the very end to measure your results, because this is a really important part of any marketing. We want to put it out there and test stuff that's new, but I need you to measure it at the end so that we know what worked and what didn't and what you'd like to try for the next time. So I want you to learn from this experiment and then have a go at it again. All right, this wraps up today's training on building your audience and your influence authentically and honestly. If you have any questions at all about what you've learned here in the workshop, by all means, you can comment on this lesson inside the CEO Collective member site, or you can drop it inside the Facebook group. We will always be there. I'd be happy to answer your questions at any point in time. So just know, no matter when you watch this or when you're implementing this tactic in your business, let us know if you need some support and some help. And I'm going to encourage you just to remember that marketing mantra. You're committing to the strategy today, and you're going to implement it consistently from this moment forward. So whatever that 30-day window is that you've set, get after it, babe. It's where the rubber meets the road. This is the drive part of your business. It's where sales and marketing are in full swing and you're really building that thriving business. So get after it, make it happen. You've got this, and I will be here to cheer you along every step of the way. All right, talk to you soon.